This is Sable Shultz, manager of the Transgender Services at the Center in Colfax. I use she, her pronouns. And today I'm talking about sort of neo-pagan winter celebrations, right? Which is kind of a moderately large topic. I do identify as neo-pagan and as a witch. And what sort of that means is these are spiritual practices and beliefs that date back to Europe, some as far back as the Neolithic times, sort of mostly solar celebrations when it comes to our holidays. So one of the big things that our ancestors looked at when experiencing the year was the sun, the what times it sort of rose, what times it set, where it moved in the sky. And one thing that we noticed, right, was there was a point at which the days were shortest, that the sun was lowest in the sky, and that became known as winter solstice. And it became this day where sort of we looked forward to what that next year may bring us, as well as like the joys of the year that we were leaving had brought us. And it was really critical to people who were very focused on agricultural experiences and being aware of when to plant, when to harvest, and all of these things. And so there were a lot of different traditions. As I tell people, like, I was sort of raised culturally Christian, right? I was raised in the United States. I had a lot of sort of standardized, normal social experiences. And I discovered sort of neo-paganism in my late teens and early 20s, and really found that I connected with the cycles of the year. And so for the winter, right, it's a time of inward reflection. It's a time of honoring what the world has brought us, what life has brought us, and preparing ourselves for the work for the year ahead. And so some of the traditions that I engage in is often I have a couple of folks that I have come over, right, and we may do a ceremony around honoring the accomplishments that we've had over the years, a bit of dedication towards the work that we want to do in the upcoming year. I mean, it's kind of just a typical family celebration in other ways, right? We share food, we share gifts, we share fun times, right? We share stories about the year and a connection. Obviously, it's a little harder this year, right? Because everybody is so isolated. We have concerns around a pretty major pandemic, right? And so it's a day also to spend and reach out to folks that you may not otherwise get a chance to connect with. So some of the traditions, right, with Yule, as it's called in some places, Winter Solstice, are very kind of almost standard, right? Like the Yule log was an ancient pagan tradition, as was like sort of the Christmas tree. And for many folks, they incorporate those elements. We don't really decorate in that way specifically, but sometimes we'll just sort of decorate for the winter season and things like that. Some of the holidays that we celebrate, one of the books that I read was Drawing Down the Moon. And it's sort of this amazing contextual piece that looks at all sorts of different European traditions and pathways and how they celebrate and connect with their spirituality and their faith. I practice specifically a mix of reclaiming tradition and fairy tradition, and Starhawk's Drawing Down the Moon is a great resource in terms of a book for learning about reclaiming tradition, which is really strongly centered on social activism and how we engage what we do, how do we engage our faith into social work and social activism work. So I would strongly recommend that as a good text. I think there's pretty much looking over like sort of the reclaiming websites, and those are really helpful in terms of understanding how the neo-pagan reclaiming faith looks at some of these practices around solstice, around winter solstice, Yule, and the rest of the holidays. So.